Hello, in this session we will be talking about what are the factors that is going to affect the rate of photosynthesis, right? We can divide those factors in two categories. One, the external factors, and second, the internal factors. Okay. Now even the external factor can be divided into CO2, temperature, light, and water. And the internal factors can be chlorophyll, it can be age, it can be anatomy. But for all practical purpose, we concentrate only on the external factors. Okay, so first of all, we will talk about the carbon dioxide. We know very well that carbon dioxide that is present in our atmosphere is just 0.03%. But imagine what is going to happen if the concentration of CO2 is going to increase or decrease from 0.03%. So if the concentration of CO2 is going to increase, obviously the rate of photosynthesis is going to increase, right? But there is a limit, okay, and that limit reaches at 0.05. Okay, so you can see there that as the CO2 concentration increases, the rate of photosynthesis also increases till 0.05. But beyond 0.05, there is a sudden decrease in the rate of photosynthesis. Why? Because beyond 0.5, what happens that enzyme get carboxylized. But suppose if the concentration is going to decrease from 0.03%, then what will happen? In that case, there will be no effect on the rate of photosynthesis till the composition point. Now, what is composition point? Composition point is a point in which there is no gases exchange between plants and environment. So whatever the less CO2 that is present in the atmosphere is actually compensated by the respiratory CO2. Okay, so till the composition point there is no effect, but of course below the composition point definitely the rate of photosynthesis will decrease. Okay, right, let's talk about another factor, that is light. We know very well that we see the visible range of light, that is VIBGYOR, okay, starting from violet to red. Okay, so there are different aspects of light. First is the intensity. Okay, so as the intensity increases, the rate of photosynthesis also increases, right? And it will keep on increasing until the other factors not become the limiting. So there is also one concept of limiting factor. We will discuss about that. Okay, and the effect of light intensity is actually called as a solarization. Okay, and we know very well that this solarization is actually leads to photooxidation, and we know, we have already learned in the chapter of light reaction that this solarization or photooxidation of chlorophyll is prevented by the carotenoids. So you can see there. So that is how. Now there are a few more questions about the light. Is there any photosynthesis in case of UV light or IR or infrared light? Answer is yes. You see, in IR or infrared, what happens? The photosynthesis occurs in case of bacteria. There are three categories of UV. That is UV1, UV2 and UV3. Okay. And we know very well their wavelength is from 0 to 390 micrometer, right? So the very first, that is from 0 to 100 micrometer, they act as a bactericide. That is, this UV1 ray is going to kill the bacteria. There is some practical application as well. You might have observed that in your RO water UV is there, and that UV is of the range of UV1 category, that is going to kill the bacteria. Similarly, if you go any of the ICU in hospital, you will see one blue color light is actually in every ICU you will find. So that blue color light is actually emitting the UV1. So naturally they are going to kill the bacteria. But UV2 and UV3, these lights actually promote the bacterial photosynthesis. Okay, so in case of UV rays, the bacteria are going to photosynthesize, as well as in case of IR, the bacteria is going to photosynthesize, right? So these are the things as far as the light is concerned. Let's talk about what exactly is a composition point. The composition point is such a point in which there is no gases exchange between plants and environment. And this is actually often measured in terms of certain external attributes, or we can say that the minimum concentration of CO2 at which there is no gases exchange between plants and animals, okay, or the minimum concentration of oxygen in which there is no exchange of gas between plants and environment, or we can say the light intensity in which there is no gases exchange between plants and environment. What I mean to say, there can be one external attributes attributed to the very concept of composition point, but the moot thing is that there is no gases exchange between plants and environment. That is what we call composition point, right? Now let's talk about the temperature. What happens as the temperature increases, the rate of photosynthesis also increases, but mind it, it is only to the optimum temperature, because beyond optimum temperature what will happen? The enzymes is going to denature. If the enzymes will denature, naturally the photosynthesis will decrease, okay. But if you compare C3 and C4 plants, there is a sharp differences as far as the optimum temperature is concerned, because in case of C3 plants, the optimum temperature lies at the range of just 25 degrees Celsius. But in case of C4 plants, it is in the range of 40 to 45 degrees Celsius. And we have already studied the reason. The reason lies in the cranch anatomy. We know about that, right? Let's talk about oxygen. So what happens that rate of photosynthesis increases with the increase in the concentration of oxygen, and that is only till 21%. That is the oxygen present in our atmosphere. Beyond 21%, what happens? That rate of photosynthesis is going to decrease. Why? Because beyond 21%, again the enzymes are getting oxidized, and if the enzymes will oxidize, naturally the photosynthesis will not happen, okay. There is a one thing what we call Warburg effect, okay. What exactly it is? It is the decrease in the rate of photosynthesis due to high oxygen concentration. And we know very well that why there is a decrease in photosynthesis, because oxygen is a competitive inhibitor of carbon dioxide fixation by Rubisco, because at higher oxygen what happens? It shifts to oxygenase activity leading to photorespiration, and there is a photorespiratory loss. So that's why the photosynthetic yield decreases. So more and more oxygen, the amount of or the yield of photosynthesis is going to decrease due to the prominence of the photorespiration, okay. So this is all as far as the Warburg effect is concerned. Now let's talk about the limiting factor. What is limiting factor? This concept was actually proposed by Blackman. The concept says that if the process is simultaneously under control of more than one factors, then the factor that is present in the minimum quantity control the rest of the factor. That is a very simple thing, okay. We can correlate with a practical example also. For instance, in Rajasthan, what is the limiting factor? Water, isn't it? So everything is ordained around the water. But the same water is not a limiting factor for the people living in the north. So what I mean to say, that if any process is under the control of more than one factors, then the factors which is at the scarcity or at the less amount, that is going to control the entire factor. That is what we call the limiting factor, right? Another important thing is that for a plant, the integral part cannot be a limiting factor. For instance, the chlorophyll cannot be a limiting factor. The enzymes cannot be a limiting factor, right? So the moment we talk about the limiting factor, we have to look at the external factors only, okay. We will see a couple of examples. For instance, in the given question, which of the following is not the limiting? Now you see, the correct answer is chlorophyll. Why? Because CO2, water, light, all are external factor. Their number can influence the rate of photosynthesis, but not the chlorophyll, because it is the integral part. Because one particular plant can have a more chlorophyll, one particular plant can have a less chlorophyll. That is its nature. So that cannot influence the rate of photosynthesis, right? Now one more question. Which of the following is not limiting factor? That is intensity of light, frequency of light, duration of light, wavelength of light. Mind it. In this question, we have to think about that what is going to influence the photosynthetic yield and which of the given option is not going to influence the photosynthetic yield. And the correct answer is the duration of light. Why? Because suppose the photosynthetic yield is 1 gram per hour, and if I give plant 5 hours of light, then naturally it will form 5 gram. But what is the photosynthetic yield? 1 gram per hour, isn't it? So duration of light is not going to influence the photosynthesis. Rest of the things will influence. It is going to be influenced by the intensity. Right now we have seen wavelength is also going to influence, because we know very well that red light is the most efficient, blue light is not as efficient, right? Green light is the least efficient. So naturally wavelength is going to influence. So is the frequency. Okay. So the duration of light cannot be a limiting factor, right? So this is all what I have to discuss as far as the factors affecting photosynthesis is concerned. Okay. Thank you.